LiSTNR production.
An aspiring rapper, battling drug addiction and escalating gambling debts, raided a home in inner Sydney in August 2018. Armed with a blank-firing pistol and knuckledusters, 30-year-old Jett McKee broke into the home of Blake Davis, a 31-year-old actor and martial arts enthusiast, and Hannah Quinn, a 26-year-old former kindergarten teacher. McKee fled after the robbery and was chased down, with Davis later striking him with a samurai sword, killing him. The ensuing New South Wales Supreme Court trial in late 2020 had to consider self-defence, excessive force, and what occurred after the robbery, culminating in a manslaughter conviction for Davis and an accessory conviction for Quinn. I'm Dan Mullins. This is Crime Insider's Judgment, a deep dive on a judge's final verdict of a crime and what transpired to incite that judgment. At around 1:45 p.m. on August 10, 2018, in the quiet, tree-lined enclave of Forest Lodge, an inner Sydney suburb, Blake Davis and Hannah Quinn were in Davis's modest granny flat at Hereford Street, a self-contained unit behind a main house rented for its affordability. Davis, a part-time actor with a passion for martial arts, kept a samurai sword, a gift from his brother, mounted in the home. After sleeping in, Quinn returned from a local cafe, carried 2 coffees, avocado on toast, and a bacon and egg roll, anticipating a calm lunch with her boyfriend. As Quinn approached the front yard, she noticed a man, later identified as Jett McKee, behaving oddly, looking around everywhere, she later told police. Alarmed, she called out to Davis, who was inside. Moments later, McKee, wearing a black balaclava, burst through the door of the granny flat. High on methamphetamine or ice, McKee wielded a blank firing pistol, realistic but incapable of firing live rounds, and brass knuckledusters, a metal weapon worn over the fingers. He shouted threats, yelling, "Give me your money," and pointed the gun at Quinn and at Davis. Court evidence revealed McKee punched David in the face with the knuckledusters, striking his cheek or temple, causing Davis to stagger, briefly losing consciousness, a point of contention at the trial. McKee then grabbed a bag from Quinn's shoulder and headed back out through the door, fleeing toward Hereford Street. Quinn gave chase, sprinting through the front gate and down the road, determined to reclaim her bag. In her 6-hour police interview, played at trial, Quinn described catching up to McKee about 80 to 100 metres from the flat. She told police through tears, "I grabbed the bag and he turned and tried to punch me." McKee slipped or stumbled, falling to his hands and knees on the pavement. Quinn told detectives he then pointed the gun at her. She froze in fear, telling police, "I thought he was going to shoot me. I just stopped. I couldn't move." Hearing Quinn's screams, Davis, dazed from the punch, grabbed the samurai sword and ran outside, wearing only boxer shorts, his mind racing with panic. Witnesses painted a vivid, chaotic picture. Rosini Palmer, a painter working nearby, heard a woman shout, "What the fuck are you doing? Who the fuck are you?" and saw a man in a balaclava run, fall, and be pursued by a woman and a man in his underwear holding what looked like a lamp pole. Another neighbour saw Davis raise the sword with both hands and strike McKee on the head as he knelt, a single, forceful blow. Forensic pathologist Dr. Istvan Samarai later testified the strike fractured McKee's skull, severing critical blood vessels and exposing brain matter, a catastrophic injury. McKee, aged 30, died at the scene. In the aftermath, Quinn and Davis panicked. Davis wrapped the bloodied sword in a plastic sheet, and the couple fled, ducking into a nearby alleyway, fearing more intruders tied to McKee may seek them out. Over the next 3 days, they moved between hotels, starting at the Urban Hotel in St. Leonard's, then others, carrying the sword, nunchucks, a gold airsoft gun, and $21,380 in cash stuffed in an Uber Eats bag. Items the prosecution later suggested hinted at small-scale cannabis dealing. Quinn told police they didn't call 000. She said, "We were so scared, we thought someone else was coming for us." Consumed by shock, they avoided authorities until Monday, August the 13th, when a solicitor arranged their surrender at Newtown Police Station, 3 days after the killing. It's critical to examine the personal histories of Jett McKee, Blake Davis, and Hannah Quinn. Jett McKee. Born in 1988, McKee was a 30-year-old Glebe resident and aspiring rapper, known in some circles for gritty, raw lyrics reflecting urban struggle. Court records painted a troubled portrait, a severe addiction to methamphetamine, fueled by gambling debts, particularly from poker machines at local pubs. Toxicology reports confirmed ice in his system, driving his erratic, desperate behaviour on that fateful day. An accomplice, called Frank O'Connor at the pair's trial, allegedly drove McKee to Forest Lodge, believing Quinn and Davis were small-time cannabis dealers, easy targets for a robbery to fund McKee's habit. His life, marked by addiction and financial strain, ended tragically. But his violent intrusion set the fatal chain in motion. Blake Davis. At 31, Davis, from Sydney, was a lean, unassuming man with a passion for acting and martial arts. He landed minor roles in Australian films and television, supplementing income as a labourer or handyman. His martial arts training, kung fu and related disciplines, gave him familiarity with weapons, including the samarai sword, a legal gift from his brother, possibly for display or practice. Friends described him as gentle, loyal and protective, with no criminal history. His defence later emphasised his short and small stature, arguing he felt overwhelmed by an armed intruder acting to save Quinn. Hannah Quinn, then 26, Quinn grew up in a stable, middle-class family, training as a kindergarten teacher and earning a reputation as warm and nurturing. She left teaching before 2018, entering a relationship with Davis and a lifestyle that the court heard included minor cannabis sales, though she was never charged. With no prior record, Quinn's chase of McKee and flight with Davis became focal points, her actions framed by fear and loyalty rather than malice. After their surrender, the New South Wales Police charged both Davis and Quinn with murder under Section 18 of the Crimes Act, which defines murder as causing death with intent to kill or inflict grievous bodily harm, or with reckless indifference to human life. Davis pleaded not guilty, invoking self-defence under Section 418, which permits force, even lethal, if a person reasonably believes it necessary to protect themselves or another from imminent harm. The burden lay with the prosecution to disprove this beyond reasonable doubt. Quinn also pleaded not guilty to murder and faced an additional charge of being an accessory after the fact to murder under Section 347, tied to her role in fleeing, hiding the sword, and evading police. The prosecution, led by Crown Prosecutor Chris Taylor, argued the response was excessive. McKee was fleeing 80 to 100 metres from the unit, posing no immediate threat when Davis struck. For Quinn, the Crown initially claimed her chase and tackle contributed to the killing, and her 3-day flight after the incident showed intent to shield Davis. The defence countered that the couple faced a terrifying, split-second crisis, acting on instinct to survive. The trial began in November 2020 in the New South Wales Supreme Court before Justice Natalie Adams, a former prosecutor. A jury of 12 heard weeks of testimony. Crown Prosecutor Taylor argued McKee's death was senseless and unlawful. He conceded McKee's intrusion was violent, bursting through the door, threatening with a gun, punching Davis and stealing Quinn's bag, but argued the response crossed a line. By the time Davis struck, McKee was on his hands and knees, 80 to 100 metres away, fleeing. Taylor told the jury this was not self-defence. This was retribution. The forensic pathologist, Dr. István Samarai, told the court the force was severe, consistent with a two-handed strike. The Crown argued this brutality exceeded any defensive need. The painter, Rossini Palmer, was working nearby, peering from a loft window. He said he saw the man in the balaclava run, fall backwards and be chased by a woman, Quinn, and a man in boxer shorts, Davis, holding a lamp pole. Palmer said, "It happened so fast. Then I saw him hit the guy." Palmer testified that he saw blood everywhere. Philip East was in a nearby house watching a Banking Royal Commission live stream. He heard shouts from the street and looked out. He saw a man run, fall, and a man in underwear strike him with a long object. Later, he found a white car smeared with blood, pooled blood on the road, and items, including a balaclava, knuckledusters, and the blank firing pistol. He told the court it was shocking, unreal. Another resident across the street recognised the sword, having seen it displayed in Davis's granny flat. She told the court she saw Davis, half naked, chasing someone with something long in his hands, and Quinn nearby, shouting. On August the 14th, 2018, Quinn gave a 6-hour recorded interview played for the jury. In a forensic jumpsuit, tears streaming, she recounted the horror. She told police he came in, pointed the gun, said, "Give me your money." He hit Blake, and I ran after him for my bag. She described McKee falling, pointing the gun at her, and Davis striking. "I was just frozen. That's when Blake came up and hit him, and I just saw blood." She said in the interview, in relation to her reluctance to call 000, "I knew he needed help, but he'd just tried to rob us at gunpoint." The Crown highlighted the couple being on the run for 3 days after the incident. It heard they'd hid in alleys, stayed at the hotels, carried the sword in question, nunchucks, the gold airsoft gun, and over $20,000 in cash. Prosecutor Taylor argued this showed consciousness of guilt rather than fear. Taylor also argued that no witness saw McKee point the gun at Quinn on the street, which undermined the case for self-defense. The chase, he said, turned a robbery into a vengeful killing. Davis's barrister, Margaret Caneen SC, and Quinn's counsel, Tom Hughes, built a narrative based on self-defense, urging the jury to step into the couple's shoes. Caneen argued Davis, a short and small man, was concussed from McKee's punch, disorientated and terrified for Quinn. Hearing her screams, he grabbed the sword, a familiar object from martial arts, and acted on instinct. Margaret Quinn told the court, the law allows lethal force if you reasonably believe it's necessary to stop a threat. Citing Section 418 of the Crimes Act, Margaret Quinn told the jury, see it through Blake's eyes, an armed intruder, a gun, his partner in danger. Tom Hughes called Davis's act bravery, gallantry, valour and courage, likening him to a war veteran defending his home, stepping between Hannah and a gun with real courage. For Quinn, Hughes argued she neither struck McKee nor intended harm. He said her chase was a split-second reaction to reclaim her bag, and when McKee pointed the gun, she froze in terror, not aggression. Their flight, hiding the sword and moving hotels, was panic, not guilt, fearing a wider attack. Coming up, key arguments submitted by the pair's defence teams and a letter written to the court by Hannah Quinn. Blake Davis chose to testify before the jury. He took the stand, voice trembling, recounting the intrusion. He said, "This guy bursts in, points a gun, yells for money. He punched me. I felt dizzy, sick. I heard Hannah screaming, and I just grabbed the sword." He insisted he aimed to stop McKee, not to kill him. He said, "I thought he'd shoot her. I couldn't let that happen." During cross-examination, Prosecutor Taylor put to Davis, "Why chase him 100 metres? He was running away." Davis replied, "It was seconds. I wasn't thinking. I just wanted to protect her." Hannah Quinn did not testify. Instead, the court heard what's called her ERISP, her electronically recorded interview with suspected person. Tendered by the defence, her statement detailed her fear. "He punched Blake, took my bag, and I ran after him. He fell, turned, and pointed the gun at me. I was frozen. After the strike, she yelled, 'What the fuck have you done?' in shock, not approval." She described what happened next that resulted in them fleeing. "We ran because we were scared, petrified someone else was coming." Cross-examination was tense. Taylor challenged Davis. "You didn't need to kill him. He was down, fleeing." But Quinn countered. "He'd threatened your lives, punched you, aimed a gun at your partner. How could you know he'd stop?" A critical issue at the trial was the testimony of a neighbour named PHS by the court, whose account shifted. Initially, PHS claimed to see Quinn tackle McKee and Davis strike him, but later told police the Crown pressured her to, quote, "change my freaking statement." Justice Adams noted PHS's struggles with PTSD, suicidal thoughts, borderline personality disorder, and therefore eroded reliability. The Crown's failure to fully disclose this, Adams ruled, misled the court, a flaw in the prosecution's case. Justice Adams guided the jury meticulously. I will read directly from the court judgment. Mr. Davis relies upon the defensive self-defense of another. He was hit in the head by the deceased, resulting in, according to the defense, a loss of consciousness. After regaining consciousness, Mr. Davis then became aware that Ms. Quinn was pursuing the deceased, could hear her screaming, and gave chase to both of them. The deceased had a gun pointed at Ms. Quinn at the time Mr. Davis struck him. He adopts the explanation given by Ms. Quinn in her ERISP. As such, his actions were to save her. Mr. Davis also relies upon the partial defences of excessive self-defence and extreme provocation. In order for the Crown to eliminate self-defence as an issue, it must prove beyond reasonable doubt that the accused's actions were not done by him in self-defence. This involves the jury considering two questions. Has the Crown proved beyond reasonable doubt that the accused did not believe at the time of each assault by him that it was necessary to do what he did in order to defend himself or others? And has the Crown proved beyond reasonable doubt that that conduct by the accused was not a reasonable response in the circumstances as he perceived them? As for the partial defence of extreme provocation, the Crown has to disprove that Mr. Davis's actions were in response to the conduct of the deceased, that such conduct was a serious indictable offence, and that this caused Mr. Davis to lose self-control. Further, it has to be established that the deceased's conduct would have not caused an ordinary person to lose self-control in this way. In the event that a partial defence is not negated, the result for Mr. Davis would be manslaughter. Although it was suggested that manslaughter by dangerous and unlawful act might also be available, it remains to be seen as to whether the evidence at trial supports manslaughter being put on that basis to the jury. Later, the judge says, "I have set out the evidence the Crown relies upon to establish that Ms. Quinn was part of a joint criminal enterprise with Mr. Davis to murder the deceased. It seems to me, especially in the context of witnesses hearing Ms. Quinn cry out, 'What have you done?' and 'No,' that the Crown faces significant hurdles in establishing the case against Ms. Quinn for murder. I will consider the question as to whether there is a case to go to the jury against her for murder, if and when that question arises." After weeks of evidence, the jury retired to deliberate. On December 10, 2020, Justice Adams directed a not guilty verdict for Hannah Quinn on murder, stating, as a matter of law, the evidence does not support a conviction. The foreman promptly agreed, acquitting her of murder. Deliberations continued for Davis and Quinn's accessory charge. Days later, the jury returned. Blake Davis was found not guilty of murder, but guilty of manslaughter. The jury found the sword strike excessive, beyond self-defence, but lacked the intent or recklessness for murder, fitting Section 421's framework for a lesser offence. Hannah Quinn was found guilty of being an accessory after the fact to manslaughter, not murder. Her flight with Davis, hiding the sword, and 3-day evasion aided his avoidance of justice, though not tied to a murder. Sentencing hearings occurred in April the following year, with Justice Adams balancing a number of factors. In relation to Blake Davis, the Crown argued the blow's brutality showed recklessness aggravated by the chase. Margaret Cunneen countered it was a single impulsive act in extraordinary circumstances, an armed intruder, a punch, and Davis's fears for Quinn. Davis expressed remorse, writing in a statement, "I never wanted this. I'm so sorry he's gone." Justice Adams, on May 7, 2021, sentenced Davis to 5 years and 9 months in prison, with a non-parole period of 2 years and 9 months. The judge noted the trauma of the invasion, Davis's clean record, and good character, but deemed the force disproportionate to a fleeing threat. Hannah Quinn, for the accessory charge, Tom Hughes pleaded no jail, citing Quinn's youth at 26, no record, and panic-driven flight. He told the court she was shocked, terrified. She's not a criminal. The Crown called it mid-range serious. Quinn knew of the killing. She later hid the sword and moved hotels with more than $20,000 in cash and weapons. Justice Adams, seeing Quinn's role as secondary and shaped by fear, told the court, running from the scene doesn't make her a murderer. In considering the sentence to be imposed on Hannah Quinn, Justice Adams read a letter Quinn had sent to the court.
I don't even know how to begin to express or explain the anguish, torment, suffering, excruciating pain and grief that has plagued my entire being since the catastrophic events that have unfolded from the 10th of August 2018. This never-ending whirlpool of emotion I have felt throughout my body is not something I am sure I can articulate in any kind of language I know. Every single day I wake up to my very own personal living nightmare in hell. Every day I wake up, I remember I'm not living the life I chose anymore, and I am in a type of limbo, stuck, frozen, where time is irrelevant and makes no sense. Each day feels like a week. Each week feels like a month. Each month feels like a year. Each year feels like it's been 5 years. I have been living this way for 31 months. I do not remember the last time I had a whole night of undisturbed, unbroken, and peaceful night's sleep. I have woken up having wet the bed, and I have never suffered from incontinence in my life. I have woken to my bed sheets in tatters, and the confusion I felt was overwhelming. My body has forgotten what it feels like to be well rested after sleeping for 8 unbroken hours. Night terrors where I thrash around with hot and cold sweats, waking up crying desperately or yelping out. I fear the mayhem of what this has been causing my mind and body for 31 months. The depression and anxiety I suffer from has been slowly but surely chipping away, bit by bit. Any last morsel of who I was before the 10th of August 2018. It is devastating when you start wondering if it would be easier for everybody if you killed yourself. And you can't even see through that to see how wrong that thought is. It just seems natural. When every ledge you stand on, you start wondering if you should just step off it. Every truck that passes you on the road, you wonder if you should just step in front of it. Or what about trains? That surely would be an easy way to do it. You start to collect medicine and medications, stashing them away until you have enough that there is no way your body could survive that. I suffer from panic attacks where it feels like I have 4 walls closing in on me, like I am drowning and suffocating all at the same time. I experience these strange, vacant moments where I realize I've just lost a few minutes and I have no idea what I was thinking about. The life I chose in 2018 has been hijacked by circumstances no one could have ever foreseen.
There were more twists and turns. Justice Adams listed a number of flaws in the trial and ordered the state to pay 70% of Hannah Quinn's legal costs, largely to legal aid. Justice Adams criticised the Crown's murder charge as not reasonable, given scant evidence linking Quinn's chase to the killing. There was also PHS's unreliable testimony and the Crown's non-disclosure of her issues. Justice Quinn said PH's testimony burdened Quinn unfairly, a rare rebuke of the prosecution's case. Legally, the trial tested New South Wales self-defence laws. Section 418 of the Crimes Act allows force if reasonably believed necessary, but Section 421 caps excessive force at manslaughter, as for Davis. Quinn's accessory conviction probed intent. Does flight equal complicity? After her conviction, Hannah Quinn launched an appeal. Her team argued the jury had reached an unreasonable verdict. Some 2 years later, the Court of Criminal Appeal agreed to quash her conviction. The trial of Hannah Quinn and Blake Davis was a story of tragedy, a drug-fueled robbery, a desperate chase, a lethal sword strike, and a courtroom battle over survival and justice. Thanks for listening to Crime Insider's Judgements. We love hearing your feedback, so please rate and review this episode. If you have a case you want us to cover, let us know via Instagram at LiSTNR Crime or TikTok at LiSTNR Crime Team. I'll be back again next Thursday with another case. I'm Dan Mullins, with sound designed by Niall Fernandez. This series was recorded and produced on Gadigal land.